Makeup, to me, is an art form. It is a temporary art form that is created and destroyed on a daily basis. But it is still an art form, especially when practiced by what I consider a makeup artist as opposed to a makeup person. My experience with Rocky was an interesting one because it came out of the blue. They told me that it was going to be a fight picture, and it was a low-budget fight picture. You know, there wasn't a lot of money in it, but we needed some swollen eyes and some pieces, and there was going to be some blood. Sly's an interesting person to work with. He's a multifaceted individual, and it was his baby. This could be a make or break. All of a sudden, his dream is laying here in front of him. If this movie fails, where does he go from there? He and Sasha lived in this little one-bedroom apartment in Hollywood. Their bed was a mattress that was on the floor. Hanging from the chandelier in the living room was a punching bag and his dog Butkus. And Sly and I would sit on the mattress in the bedroom with the blinds pulled, and he would show me Super 8 films. And he'd say, now this is, I'm going to take a punch here, and he's basically working out the choreography of the fights. And so we literally choreographed the whole fight from watching other fights and seeing how things happen. And then he'd get me pictures and things to work from. So then I went to work and got a cast of his face. At that time, I didn't really have a big lab. I was working in my house, so he came over to my house, and I did a face cast in my kitchen. My grandfather, which started the whole thing, goes back to actually the late 1800s, where he was a wig maker in England. So the family wound up here in Hollywood in the early teens, and basically with a wig shop. One thing that got us kind of started in the business was one day an actor had accidentally shaved off half his mustache and came by in the shop. And he literally duplicated this little mustache. And this was Adolphe Menjou, and they were shooting the original version of The Three Musketeers. And so it's like all of a sudden, Jesus, look what the Westmores did. They saved our butt, so let's go back and see what else they're doing. And that launched the family into the movie business. I have gone all the way from working with Elizabeth Taylor to Rocky, Raging Bull, and 18 years of Star Trek. The process in the very beginning is to get a hold of that script, read through it one time, get all the way through it, get the story idea, and then you go back literally page by page, and you start picking out, and it's usually between the lines. You don't even have to read the dialogue. You just read between the lines, because that's where it'll say, took a jab to the right eye, blood spurt out the mouth. I mean, it'll give you clues through the script if the writer is really putting his visual into the script. Sly's makeup, just as plain makeup originally, consisted of little eyepieces that went right in here, little plastic eyepieces that had cuts in them. And of course, to this day, he still claims he lost all his eyebrows due to me putting these things on and pulling them off. With Rocky, it was the reality of what really happens to the skin, not what I think it's going to do, what really happens. That's all very important to the reality of what the viewer is going to take in. Then they believe. They believe what's going on. This is my lab, very much like what I had in the days of Rocky back in the 70s. And a lot of the techniques are still the same today as they were then. And these are the actual molds that I used for the film. The same very heavy-duty plaster Sly had to wear, little pieces over his eyes every single day as the Rocky character. And this is the mold. This is above his eye, right here, and those are the little teeny pieces. And they were pressed out of plastic. That way they could glue on and take a Q-tip with acetone on it, go around the edges, and dissolve it right into his eyes. So when you see the close-ups of Rocky, you'll notice all these little cuts over his eyes. And every single pair came out of this little mold here. I have actually used these today when something came up where I needed a swollen eye, and I've used the same pieces. And of course, people are always, actors today are thrilled when I say, this is something I used on Stallone. You know, they're thrilled, I'm wearing Stallone's pieces. One of the interesting things with Mickey, the character played by Burgess Meredith, that people aren't familiar with. And I thought, gee, this is really obvious. And until it's pointed out that he was wearing cauliflower ears and a broken nose and a tube shoved up one nostril to literally give his nose this S shape, and the old punch-drunk fighter glue his ears back and glue in these appliances into them and put little red silk fibers into the plastic so they disappeared right into the skin. For the 3 pictures that he worked in, he wore that every single day. And it's funny, it's people look at the movie and they think that that's what Burgess really looks like. The final fight of Rocky, which was really the culmination of this whole thing, that everybody runs out of that movie ready to fight.
Put your hands up there, chump.
I'm not fighting.
Come on.
Every round was laid out ahead of time. We knew that we were going to fight for the first 3 rounds and maybe nothing would happen. But then all of a sudden Apollo Creed is going to land a right to one eye and his cheek's going to start swelling a little bit. So round 4, Sly's going to get a little piece. Then in round 5, maybe he's going to hit Apollo Creed over the other eye and it's going to split a little bit and he's going to get a little blood, which happens over here then on Carl. Then by the time we get to round 6, the little piece here on Sly, it has to be changed to get a little bigger, and Carl's cut over here is starting to swell a little bit. And this goes on like that all the way through with both eyes on both characters until round 15, to the point where Sly's eye is totally closed up. Continuity is very important when you're doing pictures like this, because you have to keep track of the swelling going on, bruises coming and going. My thought all the time is what looks real, what looks real. It can't look like a studio, it can't look strange, you know, it has to always have this touch of realism to it. Down here on the table, when we had the multiple molds that changed, these are actually Sylvester Stallone's eyes. The mold was taken, the entire face cast where he sat in a chair, and had an alginate cast taken of his face, poured in plaster, and then I took pieces of it off. And these pieces were embedded into this large plate, and you can notice it's also very, very thick, because that way I can bake them over and over and over again. In making the progression of appliances, and if you notice inside the mold here, there's marked a 1, and in this plate over here, there's a 3. And they went from this size here to larger and smaller, and that way in my continuity I could keep track of if they had a number 1 piece on next to number 2 and number 3, or going down the opposite way if swelling was going down. And that way I could pour the rubber into the mold here. Now the foam rubber is made up of liquid latex, and chemicals are added to it to give it body and strength, and it's whipped up in the blenders. They're regular household blenders, and the latex is whipped up to the consistency of chocolate mousse. And then it is poured into these molds. The molds are closed up, and then this mold, when the rubber sets, is put into an oven, and they cook at 200 degrees. So that rubber is put in there, and we vulcanize the rubber the same as if you were making a tire, and the heat in the oven sets it up, makes it nice and firm. This is the same technique that I used on Rocky almost 30 years ago. This is an art form that I enjoy, and I want other people to enjoy. It's not something I want to stand out and say, oh, gee, what a great makeup, but gee, what a great movie, what a great character, that it all becomes part of the film. My Uncle Perce said one time, many, many years ago, the best compliment for a good makeup is no comment at all. You're giving the actors something to work with, to be able to look into the mirror and say, I've been hit in the face. I've been hurt. I feel hurt. I can feel hurt because I look at this and I can see that there's something going on. And as this fight went on, and the face would swell, and Sly could look at that, and Carl could look at that, and they could feel this beating going on. If my pieces didn't work, it blows the visual image of it right away, no matter what else goes on, whether the script was great, the acting was great, everything else is great. There is a reality that has to be there in the wigs in the bone structure, in the muscle structure, and that's what you need to understand as a special makeup artist. With Carl's skin tone, had to be very careful that things with all the water and the powder and things, that things didn't start looking ghosty or looking pale. So it was a little bit more of a challenge to match up his skin tone, because here we have a piece of rubber on here that has to blend into his natural skin tone. So I am controlling the looks between fair skin and dark skin. You had to put more highlights into Carl's bruises so they would show, as opposed to Stallone's. With those you could put, you put the reds, the purples. But with Carl I had to use more yellows and light greens and things like that to bring out the bruises, so you really got the feel that this man was starting to swell. And so there is a different color palette for both actors. Since there was so much water that we were using too, the blood always had a reality to it, because it would drip and follow like drops and things as it would work its way down the body or work its way down the face. And having to squirt him, I had to get close to him. And I don't know how many times he punched me. And it's like, hey, okay. See, you'd want to squirt him a little further away, because he'd always take give me a jab in the stomach, Rocky is a success story of which we all got to be part of, and to be able to feel that success, and that there is, the American dream that does work, whether it's on the screen or in his personal life.
The champion got a left to the ribs, his right rib.
Everybody had so much faith in the project that they were willing to work extra hard even.
I can't see nothing. Gotta open my eye. Cut me, man.
You don't want to do it.
Well, cut me.
This is one thing that just kind of got passed around from drawer to drawer, and I never lost it. This is the original Cut Me Mick. And of course there's CGI in many ways of doing it today, but we're going back to the old process of the makeup artist special effects type of process. And this razor blade, the edges were rounded off so it wouldn't actually cut sly. And then a ball, literally from a squirting flower, was taken, a small tube taken across here. So I would take and pull the ball off, fill it with blood, put it back on, and in the scene, all he did was he came across his eye like this, and when the director said, go for it, all they had to do was squeeze the little ball, and the blood shot out of there onto the eye. So that's a wonderful piece of memorabilia.
You don't want to do it.
Well, cut me.
It's one of those memorable scenes in movie history, which was one take. I wanted to do it second time. The blood's coming from a different area than you think it is. It's like we fooled the audience, and it was our own little magic trick for the movie. It was such an experience. I mean, not only the film, but my association with Sly, that no matter what else I was doing, a Rocky II was a no-brainer to say yes to. Rocky III, the same thing. It's an experience to see a character mature and to be able to go through that whole process. That it was something that I wanted to be part of. It was the leader in not only fight films, but feel-good films. We were going through a period then of really downer, depressed films, and Rocky turned the world around. As a makeup artist, Rocky was one of my biggest challenges to that period in time, and literally set a tone for me in my career from that point on. It's one of the real highlights of my career.